How nice it is. I'm back from vacation just as Matthew Knies starts to heat up, although there was a scary moment for Jake McCabe. Let's break down a busy weekend for the Buds here on the Lockdown Leafs podcast, part of the Lockdown Podcast Network, your team every day.
Your Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm back. Hello and welcome to the Lockdown Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs centric podcast hosted by myself, David Morassutti. Yes, I am back. My co-host, Mike DeStefano, is now gone. We have exchanged vacation trips and helping me in my return back, because there is going to be a little bit of rust, is my buddy Austin Owens. He is joining us on the podcast today. Austin, thank you for helping me out. Some of you will hear my voice is still a little in a bit of recovery mode still from this cruise.
How the turntables, David. Now you come back, Mike's gone. Another call to the bullpen. He's scraping the bottom of the barrel.
And I will say I did have James from Offside Hockey. He was planning to join us, but unfortunately he had an issue at home that he had to deal with. So I made a call to the bullpen, literally made a call to the bullpen for Austin, so I knew he'd be available. And we were talking about the game anyways. Before we get into this Leafs weekend, I want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, you probably made some money if you bet on the Buds this weekend. They went 2-0, and they're back-to-back against the Bruins and the Flyers. If you bet on Matthew Knies to do anything, you did pretty good for yourself.
You had a great weekend.
He had a great weekend, and I when I was on vacation, it's a little tough when you're on a cruise because you're not as connected. You're on a ship in the middle of the ocean, getting any.
It sounds terrible.
Yeah, it's not good if you want to keep in touch with the sports side of things.
David had a horrible time. Just for anyone.
Side note, though, we had obviously a bunch of Americans on the ship. And I was talking to some of them, and they're like, we're not too happy right now. I said, why not? It's like, well, the cruise ship doesn't have a license to have ESPN playing. So this is during college football playoffs.
No playoff, no NFL, no NBA.
They did have some NFL. They did have like the afternoon game.
Oh, yeah.
Night game.
I guess it's on Fox and all those, yeah.
Yeah, so I was watching a lot of highlights. I was keeping track, along the pool side, listening to Mike, the podcast there. So was able to keep myself in tune with Leafland, and there was some debates going on about Matthew Knies and his struggles and how he wasn't putting the puck in the net like he was. And I think a little bit of that was happening before I left too.
Yeah,
I don't think we need to worry about that anymore. I think really the problem was the kryptonite was around Matthew Knies because he was truly missing Auston Matthews. You reunite him with Auston Matthews, he scores a few goals.
Yeah, your chances of scoring with Auston Matthews go up by a couple percentage points, I think. I don't think that's a huge hot take. But, I mean, yeah, the last 2 days have been unbelievable. I think we were talking about it during the game. It's just some of the scoring chances he's had, the goal where he basically puts it to his backhand and throws a no-look shot in last night against Boston. Like, he's just trying things that he wouldn't have tried when he was in this slump. It just shows the confidence that he has back. And it's just, he had a play tonight where it was poked away by, I believe it was Cade York, but he plays it onto his backhand and basically boxes out a player in front and gives himself body position. It's kind of what James Van Riemsdyk used to do with that between the legs bumper play. But he spins himself so that he boxes out the defender. And it was just like, I've never seen that before. Like, that's such an interesting way to give yourself body position and give yourself a good chance on net right in front of the blue paint.
Yeah, I think you're totally right with the JVR comparison because you saw it a lot in Toronto where he was one of the better, I think in like recent memory, one of the better net front Leafs players
yeah.
in terms of tipping on the power play. If you got him anything in front of the net and he was there, he was probably scoring. You'll see here on the graphic that I posted from Sportsnet stats, just how much like when we talk about Matthew Knies missing Auston Matthews, the numbers speak for themselves. With Auston Matthews in the lineup, those who are not watching here on YouTube, 25 games with Auston Matthews, he has 12 goals and 18 points this season. Without him, so the 13 games Matthews has been out, 2 goals and 6 points. It's pretty clear there that, you're talking about a rookie who probably spent a lot of time developing chemistry with Auston Matthews.
Yeah.
Matthews gets hurt. Now he's kind of being thrown. He's been thrown around different spots in the lineup and things like that. And I just think he knows what he needs to do to have success on that line with Marner Matthews. And I mean, we haven't even talked about Auston Matthews' return. Like, I saw the notification that
that guy,
he's awesome. I was like, I thought this guy was never going to play again this season. Like, what the heck here?
Yeah, I was led to believe he was, locked away in some room in the back halls of Air Canada Center. Jesus, Scotiabank Arena. I've dated myself a little bit there. But yeah, it's good to see him. I know they alluded to it a lot on the broadcast, but he looks, I can't imagine he's 100%, but he looks like he's back to playing the way we kind of expect him at the level he is, where he's competing hard on pucks. He's stripping guys off the puck when they're trying to break the puck out. Regular plays we've kind of come accustomed to with Auston Matthews. I think you're seeing that a lot more, whereas, the trip to Germany, everything, it felt like he was, I don't know, not coming back too soon, but he didn't look like the same player. He still looked kind of timid and, unwilling to, get into those areas. There was something about it that just didn't look the same during that time.
Yeah, like there wasn't any hesitation on his part in terms of how he was playing in these 2 games since he's been back. I mean, you saw it against Boston too. Like that trio absolutely dominated against Boston, and even against Philly, like that goal by Knies. It's all about Matthews starting to play, getting the shot, then Tanev putting it on net, and Knies knowing exactly where he needs to be. This is, I think, that again, getting these 3 going, it's going to be very important. Getting Matthews back and into a groove, obviously super important, because you hope it's going to have a trickle down with the rest of the lineup. I don't think it's happened just yet. I felt like it was a bit of a one line in terms of offense. It was a bit of a one line workhorse with that top line. Obviously, the defense scoring 2. We'll get into that a little later. But before we get into the performance of that top line, let's go into, unfortunately, the not so great part of the weekend, and that's Jake McCabe. There's a lot of takes on what happened with Jake McCabe. First and foremost, Craig Berube said it was a scary play, didn't like it. No one likes to see what happened with Jake McCabe. It wasn't exactly John Tavares, but it was giving a bit of that look when he tried to get up, where he was sitting, falling back, and Riley having to kind of keep him up. It just very unfortunate. My only take on it is I understand why Jake McCabe is doing it. The good on the broadcast, they showed like that hit from Hathaway earlier, and then obviously when your goalie gets bumped, you're not going to take that lightly. It's just one of those plays where, you know what, it's guarded Hathaway. You got to be ready for it, and I think that Krippers was right. Like, you do it, but you don't give him the opportunity to retaliate. And I look, I'm not blaming Jake McCabe for this, because first off, it was an unfortunate play. He slips. I know people were trying to bring up the knee that hit him. I think that was a little more. I don't think that was intentional for him to knee him, but I mean, Hathaway was trying to hurt him. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We know what Garner Hathaway is all about, but yeah, it just put the Leafs in a bad spot. You're losing, and again, you're going to potentially lose Jake McCabe for a bit here after he had another head injury about a month and a half ago after that game against Tampa. So just an unfortunate play all around there.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, kudos to him for defending his goaltender. That whole situation is tough for the Leafs. I mean, we're gonna talk about it later, but just, guys kind of getting into their own. A couple of you guys, getting off the schneid a bit and starting to get their goals, starting to get the offensive production back. And then again, you run into an injury. It's obviously not something that Hathaway's not going out to try and injure him. He's obviously, during a fight, you're trying to take the other guy's head off. That's just how it goes. But it was you talked about Tavares. It was very reminiscent, not in the same way, but how George Peros and Colton Orr, when he hit the ice and you immediately knew there was trouble. Like that's extremely scary. And it's, again, it's not something that I don't think he's going out there looking to drive his head in. He gets pulled back with the momentum and ends up just two guys that are over 200 pounds falling onto a stiff surface. That's not going to end well for anybody. And, it's tough in the moment. Hopefully McCabe's okay, but it's, you respect a guy for going in to defend his goaltender like that. And you just hate the end result.
You do. You really do hate the end result. And again, we won't know more until obviously when they practice next. They just did a back-to-back. I assume they're not going to be practicing until Tuesday, which will be their next game when they play Philly again. So we'll have to wait and see if there's an update on McCabe's status, and maybe hopefully this isn't something that's going to linger like the last injury did. On the other side, we're going to go through our 3 stars for the weekend. Who did we like? Who stood out? And I got to get some thoughts here from Austin on not just the McCabe injury and how that's going to impact potential lineup going forward, but a few things I missed while I was away, including some problems happening up north of the border here in Canada when it comes to Team Canada. So let's discuss that here next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets. Win or lose, the FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and more. Obviously, the NFL playoffs are going to be beginning soon. We got the Leafs got a full schedule this week. You can go and visit FanDuel and place your wagers there. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Welcome back here to the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti here, and thank you, Austin Owens, for joining me because Mike is now switched spots with me. He is now in the Florida was a little chilly when I was coming back, so he's not in the hot area yet. He's going to get there when he gets on the boat.
Right. Do you want to do Celsius or Fahrenheit? What are we looking at? Are you talking about chilly Florida?
I went from being 25 degrees in the Bahamas. The next day when we arrived back in Orlando and the port, it was 9 degrees when I woke up that morning.
Terrible.
So that might explain, other than maybe the good time I was having on the cruise, why my voice is a little, dealing with some congestion too, and dealing with the shock of being in negative weather back in Canada.
Yeah.
This is why I went away, folks. I needed to get a little bit of sun in my life.
It was only minus 12 today where I am. So
brutal.
Welcome home.
Welcome home. Yeah. But you know what?
Terrible time right now.
You know what? Hey, the Leafs kept winning when I was gone. They are off to a phenomenal start here in 2025. Now, granted, they've not played really tough teams. I mean, Boston, obviously, they've been better, but they're still, obviously, the Leafs are still better than Boston right now. But through 3 games here in 2025, the Leafs are 3-0. They're on a 4-game winning streak currently, and I guess let's focus more so on this weekend here, where you've had a 6-4 game against Boston, a 3-2 game against Philly. To me, there's no one more deserving of the first star than Matthew Knies, because without him, I don't think the Leafs win either game.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty safe bet. I don't really have much to add on to that. What was it? 4 goals, 5 points last night. I don't know how many points he finished with, 1 or 2 tonight, probably. Like, he definitely had a goal. I don't know what his point total was, but Probably, I'd say just a goal, but I mean,
He
6
had
points is solid.
So tonight he had a goal. Auston Matthews had obviously 2 assists in the game. So like that line continues to put up numbers. Funny enough, like Mitch Marner, no points tonight, which not often you see Mitch Marner going pointless. Dude, the stretch he's been on. I come back and Mitch Marner can't get a ball. He did get a point against Boston.
He did look good though. Like he was around it at least. That's like I'd rather Mitch Marner with no points and he looks dangerous than just kind of.
He did look very dangerous. There were some good chances he had, especially one chance where he just got around. He held the puck, and you don't see Mitch do this far too often. Where he holds the puck, starts going up on the rush, and then tries to deke around the defense going to the goalie. Like that's more of like a Nylander style. Matthews holding on to the puck, more of a power forward game. But I mean, speaking of power forwards, like the Leafs have really needed Matthew Knies to try to find his offensive groove. And he certainly found it. I mean, you brought up the goal that he scored where I didn't know how he scored that turnaround goal. On Jeremy Swayman out of all goalies. Yeah, that's not an easy goaltender to beat.
It was very similar to what he did against Florida in the playoffs 2 years ago, where he kind of flicked it, like very sneakily flicked it to his backhand and then just whacked it, and it went. Like it's, I can't speak to it because I'm never played at a high level as he did, but I feel like that's a lot of skill and a little bit of a hope and a prayer that doesn't sail past the post on the far side, because he's looking at the other end of the ice when he shoots that thing.
And like the interesting thing here is like with all the talk about Matthew Knies' struggles, he's at 15 goals this year. He's already surpassed, or he's on his way to surpassing his total from last year.
Yep.
He's 15 goals, 25 points in 39 games. Mike and I have been very adamant that the Leafs should be trying to get Knies signed to a deal.
Yes, correct.
And
yes,
I understand he's an RFA. You're not worried about, him walking away, but you got a lot of work to do this offseason. This should be one of those things you shouldn't have to. I mean, if you're the agent for Matthew Knies, you're probably trying to milk this a little bit more to see how much more money you can get out of the Leafs. But I mean, the offense is there. I know that there's been some ups and downs, but the effort's been there. I think it's only a matter of time before you see the Leafs really start to push a Matthew Knies extension. Hopefully we hear some rumblings of that.
Yeah, I think obviously the whole offseason, with Marner coming up and Knies being pending and Robertson, he's not having a tremendous year, but like that's a bigger discussion for another day. But I think like at this point you have to be looking at trying to get Knies. This is kind of the offseason where the Leafs management has to prove they're not pushovers in these negotiations, right? They need to, I don't know what the years and term look like, but you need to try and get Knies signed for as long a term as he's willing to sign. I know guys, if he finishes with a lower point total, he's probably not going to want to push for a 7 or 8 year term, but you want to get him signed for as many years as possible at a deal, at a number that kind of makes sense for the team and for him.
Yeah. No, I forgot to even ask. Are you giving him your first star of the weekend?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Yeah, I think just see if this can continue and hopefully more incentive for the Leafs to try to get a deal done. My second star here, and I'm not going to give it to one specific person, but I'm just going to give it to the blue line. We got goals from defenders.
Yes.
Leafs were they are the worst team when it comes to getting goals from their blue line. They got 3 this weekend. Jake McCabe, obviously, he got the goal against Boston. Nice little play there, set up for Mitch Marner. Great finish. You had Oliver Ekman-Larsson scoring.
Gritty.
Just poke it with one hand, and apparently you just never know what's going to happen because I don't know.
Throw it in the blender, and good things will happen.
Don't know how that one got past got in the net there. And then capping it off, Morgan Riley, who, let's just say, has not had the season we've expected for Morgan Riley. I know there's a lot of talk about his struggles, considering he's a top paid defenseman. He is being paid to be an offensive contributor. And this was his first goal in 26 games. He has 5 on the season. Now, he had 7 last year. So still a good chance he'll go past. I think people maybe also need to understand Morgan Riley, when he had 20 goals all those moons ago, expecting that to happen again was, like, I don't know what people were expecting. But he's always been in the 5 to, between 5 and 10 range in his career. So, I mean, I guess maybe the points total is where people are not too happy. 19 points on the year. He's also a minus 10 on the year. He is playing fewer minutes too, so you're kind of hoping that a reduced role defensively, he's playing more sheltered minutes, would allow him to get more opportunities offensively. But I think people also have to remember the power play was terrible to start the year. And he played a part in that. His shooting percentage is at 6.9% actually, which is his best mark since he scored that 20 goals. So I think really the issue is Morgan Riley probably just needs to start shooting the puck more, like he did tonight when he got that goal in overtime.
Yeah, I think like Morgan Riley, it's tough because he's got a really good shot. He doesn't, the slap shot's kind of a lost art in the NHL nowadays. Like, you don't see a lot of guys just powering a puck through. So you're kind of hoping that you can get a guy that can just, find a seam, pick a corner, do something like that, or put a puck on net low for a tip. And Mo, I mean, what you've seen and what he's had trouble with on the power play is that a lot of the times he's just throwing it on low pad for a rebound, and it's, finding shin guards. It's not getting through. So it's just, he is what he is at this point. I feel like as a 30-something-year-old defender, his point totals are going to be what they are. He's not making an egregious amount in today's NHL, especially with the cap going up. So you take what you can get. You'd like, there to be more production, but like you said, that comes along with the power play, just having a historically bad start to the year.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you consider, and maybe actually we'll talk about this maybe a little later in terms of the impact the McCabe injury is going to have, but just I just think when you're looking at this Leafs team getting more offense, it's got to come for the blue line. And I'm hoping that Riley will start to pick things up now. Hoping OEL also picks things up too, because it just takes a little pressure off the force to have to feel like they need to carry the offensive load, because it's you got guys who historically have been able to put up offensive numbers. It just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I think, part of it also falls on Mo because of the struggles that OEL has. I think, there was a bit of he obviously came into the league as an offensive defenseman, so you kind of expect that production was going to continue with the Leafs. It's been more of a defensive role for him, and, I have no complaints about what he's done so far. He's not, lacked on the side that you need him to be good at as a defenseman. It's just when the scoring slumps come, then the guys that are supposed to be, we're not asking Simone Benoit why he's having trouble scoring. We're not asking, X, Y, or Z, Philippe Myers, why he's having trouble scoring. We're asking the guys that are paid big dollars and also have a history of proving that they can produce at the NHL level.
Yeah. So is there someone you want to shout out with your second star of the weekend, though?
Defense is a good pick. I like it. I think it's a bit of an easy pick, but Auston Matthews coming back, like we said, I think he looked the part. That's got to be one of the nicest empty net goals I've seen ever. That little tip in around Pasternak last night. And then just like the feed out to Knies, he looked the part. He looked like the superstar it's not that you don't expect it from him, but you give a player a little bit of leeway, I feel like, when he's coming off a long-term injury. He missed 6 games, I believe. He's missed 15 in total this year. Like, you're not expecting him to come in and be dominant right off the hop, but you go in against I would say, their biggest rival now in the Boston Bruins. Some people would argue with that. It's the biggest game on the calendar every time it comes around, I'd say, for the Leafs nowadays. And he looked the part every single time he was on the ice. He was dominant, both ends. I loved everything I saw at Auston Matthews, and it's a real positive sign going forward.
Yeah, we were talking about how he's not hesitating. Him diving for an empty net goal,
crazy.
Maybe suggests you that he's feeling better about where he's at with this injury that is. Yeah. And I mean, you just saw the plays, the stripping of the puck, and like he really gave, I think, Elias Lindholm gave him such a tough time. So he picked his pocket a few times. Against
Physical
Boston.
with Marchand a couple of times too, which was really nice to see. Like hammered him on the boards once, didn't knock him over or anything, but just you don't usually. Matthews is one of those guys that I don't think he realizes how big he is until he can just hit a guy and kind of take him or stand him up straight. Where it's like, okay, you can be a physical force out there. It's like Alex Ovechkin. He doesn't, not to the same degree. We won't make that comparison, but Ovi doesn't throw his body around, but when he hits somebody, that person feels it tremendously.
Yeah. That's when Matthews at his best, when he's throwing the body a little bit, inserting himself physically. That's what we come to expect. My final star, I'm gonna give it to Dennis Hildeby. He didn't have a great start to the game, letting in that goal. That was like, oh no. Like we went from Matt. I heard about the Matt Murray experience, and Dennis Hildeby didn't get off to a good start, and then settled in quite nicely.
Yep.
The Leafs, in my opinion, like the Leafs, yeah, I get it. They were playing with 5 defensemen. The blue line looked a bit tired on back-to-back nights, but he saved their bacon quite a bit. And we saw this is, I think, the Dennis Hildeby we were kind of expecting to see. Big body asserting himself, using that athleticism to get, especially with those chances in front. Really battled tonight. I think it was a good bounce back, needed confidence because Joseph Woll, he's done very well with Stolarz out. We don't know how long Stolarz is going to continue to be out, so you need to have confidence in somebody being able to step in and giving Joseph Woll a bit of a breather.
I remember last year he was still with the Marlies. I ended up being at a practice that they were doing, and he walked past, and I think I'm 6'2", 6'3", like
you're pretty tall. You're taller than me.
I'm looking up at Dennis Hildeby like he's Victor Wembanyama. Like on skates, that man is an absolute mountain. So you tie the athleticism in, you tie the intangibles, like what he's shown with the Marlies. He and Aksiyamov have been extremely impressive. He just made the saves he needed to make, right? Like in overtime, especially, there were a couple rushes where it looked a little dicey. The Leafs were getting a little scrambly, and I think I've said on here before is, you just need a goalie to be calm and make the save and give your guys some confidence that that guy behind them, if things break down, that he's got them. So I think, yeah, it wasn't pretty to start the game, but he locked back in, he battled, and he got the win.
Yes, he did. And it's an important win. I know the Leafs don't have as many back-to-backs coming up, but hopefully, the confidence to play him a little bit more after this one. Hopefully, we see some good things here from Dennis Hildeby. On the other side, we're going to take another break here. We want to go through just kind of the fallout of the Jake McCabe injury, seeing how things are going to shape up potentially with the blue line with him out. And I got to get the dirty here on Team Canada. What the heck happened, Austin? Not what we come to expect from this team at the World Juniors. So let's get into that here next on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is also brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you're paying for twice? It's definitely happened to a lot of people, and that's why they signed up for Rocket Money. And Rocket Money made it easy for those people to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. What a better way to start 2025 than making sure you're doing your best to save a little bit of money and putting it to things that you need. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon to help save your money and your better future. Welcome back here to the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti, joined by Austin Owens. And as we alluded to many times in the podcast here, a very scary moment for Jake McCabe after the fight with Garner Hathaway hitting his head. Shout out to Morgan Riley for helping him in that moment, because it looked like he was going to be going backwards. when he was trying to get up there on the ice. So good on Mo for reacting to that situation. And if we're expecting a potential lengthy absence from Jake McCabe, what we saw tonight with McCabe out was Simon Benoit being paired with Tanev. I think at one point we did see Riley play with Tanev. Is it better off for the Leafs to not have Riley play with Tanev, or do we think that Craig Berube might consider a reunion of that pairing?
I seem to like what we were talking about with Morgan earlier. I feel like we've seen him at his best when offensively and just in general when he knows he has that safety blanket behind him. And Philip Myers has done a good job of just plugging in and playing simple, not trying to overextend himself to make mistakes. But I always go back to, I believe it was the Canadian division way back when we were, doing live streams back in the day where it was, Morgan Riley, if he made a turnover, TJ Brody, when he had that amazing year, he was always there to, break up a 2-on-1, disrupt the play, allow his back checkers to get back. I feel like Chris Tanev's, everything's been said. He's had an unbelievable year, like a great move by Brad Treliving to bring him in. I think that's what will probably make a lot of people feel really good. It's just a question of down the lineup, how that kind of shakes out, because then you're looking at, Benoit playing with, say, a Connor Timmins or a Philippe Myers, assuming he's back in the lineup. I think the one, I don't know how he is at the NHL level, but, reacquiring Dakota Mermis on waivers the other day seemed like, in hindsight, a pretty good idea because now they have a little bit of depth. A guy that's played some NHL minutes is dependable. So I don't really know how the lineup shakes out, but McCabe, he's not going to be your top guy at his age, but he's a guy that, everything kind of comes together with the pairings and looks a lot like it makes a lot more sense when he's in the lineup than without. Then it becomes a bit of the blender and trying to make something work.
Yeah, so obviously Dakota Murray's was reclaimed by the Leafs on waivers, sent to the Marlies. He only appeared in one game with Utah, played 10 minutes, was a -2 in that game. What I think about, I know they tried different things. Obviously, this is not the first time Jake McCabe has been sidelined.
Yeah.
So I know we did see a bit of the OEL Tanev pairing at one point. I don't know if I like a Simon Benoit Tanev pairing. I know Tanev is capable of breaking the puck out. I just feel like Benoit, that might be too much to ask for him. He's had an up and down season for me. I don't think he's been as good as he was when he was with Jake McCabe last year. Maybe that's part of the reason for that. I just think you're asking too much of him to play. Like, I think you do that Benoit Timmins pairing. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I think that's your best bet for that. And I think you have to debate between Morgan Riley and Ekman Larsson of who's going to get that assignment with Tanev. They might try Ekman Larsson right now because you've already got Riley playing with Myers, and they've developed some chemistry together, and you probably maybe it's just easier to keep that together. But
yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see how Craig Berube deals with this. But he's already dealt with it before. I'm sure we're just assuming too that he's going to be out. Maybe he'll be fine. Yeah. Although it didn't look good when it's like that, and the coach doesn't exactly feel confident in saying that he's fine, totally fine. I think it's something you have to prepare yourself for.
Yeah, he did skate off on his own power, which is good to see.
Yeah.
With Tavares, he was stretchered off. That was really scary to see. But obviously, it's not, like you said, it's not the first time he's been through this injury this year. We've seen it in other sports where guys try and force it back and, take, months, years off their career by just, trying to tough it out and see like it's okay. It's the same thing. We've seen the conversation with Auston Matthews. Would you rather force a guy back in for game, 50 something or 40 something of the season, or would you rather him be healthy in April when it matters?
Yeah.
I would rather, see what you have. You can bring out the blender and just give guys reps and opportunities, and you make sure Jake McCabe's ready when it matters. That's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, and I think you're right on that. And this is also someone who's already had a head injury this year. You just don't want to risk any potential long-term problem here. Talking about problems, Team Canada. been avoiding this a little bit. I haven't talked really to any. I haven't been on the show obviously since the World Juniors. Just saw the Austin. I just before we got on, we're watching the Americans winning on Canadian soil back to back.
That was
World
fun.
Junior goals.
I enjoyed that greatly.
Playing that Freebird, man. Poor Finnish goaltender.
That guy's so good.
Robbing left and right, making big save after big save. Yeah. His team couldn't register a single shot in overtime, or they may have gotten one.
Yeah.
Who knows? And only to lose it. Only to lose it. But the real story, obviously, here in Canada is Team Canada, not even in the conversation. Not even looking like a team that was going to compete for a medal, which is appalling. It's embarrassing in a lot of ways. I'm very fortunate that, I've been on ships on cruises where Canada has won the gold, and I maybe have bragged it a couple times to people on the ship. But fortunately, that didn't happen in the reverse for me this time. But everything I saw from this, and I'll get your thoughts on this second, but maybe you can help clarify a couple things. Because you and I were chatting in our group during on WhatsApp.
I was airing my grievances often, and
so I got a bit of that from you, just to understand the full issue. Let's start with the no practice.
Yes,
you lose to the States, good team.
Yeah,
even
earlier as well, lose to Latvia.
Oh, sorry, yes. Losing to Latvia.
That was where it started.
Yeah, that's where it started. I was just like shaking my head when I saw that. Then you decide, no, not going to practice. Not going to practice before an elimination game against Czechia because the team is tired. Tired? These are 17. I understand hockey's hard. Truly get that. Every other team is practicing. What's like Dave Cameron? What the heck, man? Like, first off, he should be left off any potential list to coach anywhere on Team Canada, Hockey Canada. They should just throw his resume out forever because that was embarrassing.
Yeah, I understand why he was selected because the 67s have had a good stretch the last little bit. I don't know how they're doing this year. They could be one of the worst teams in the league. I'm not following all that closely, but they have a track record of being good. Dave Cameron's their coach. It's in Ottawa. I understand it. I also, the name that's been thrown around a lot and we can talk about later is Gardner McDougall. Went undefeated with UMB in U Sports and then won the U18s with Canada coaching the same group. Like that seemed like a pretty good slam dunk pick to me, but it's over now. It is what it is. But yeah, a group of 17, 18-year-olds, I don't know how – I'm sure they are tired. There are 8 other teams at this tournament that are also incredibly tired, and half of them had to come from Europe and do a transatlantic flight. So they're jet-lagged and have played the same amount of games and are under the same amount of stress as your team. So right away, that kind of goes out the window for me is – it's not the practices that bother me. It's you lose to the United States in a shootout. They basically are, playing up the crowd. They're dancing on your home ice, making you look like a second-rate team in your own building. And an elimination game against the team that knocked you out the year before, you don't have a morning skate for. Like, I know that might not be something that a lot of people get, fired up about, but these hockey players, I work in other sports and they're very regimented. Like they want their morning skate, it's not, they don't want to, bag skate themselves. They're not trying to tire themselves out, but they want to, feel the puck, get on the ice, get a feel for everything. It's just part of their ritual. And it's what they've done since they were kids, especially the ones that play college, play high level hockey like all of them do. They go through a regimen every single day. So when that came out, I believe it was, Cam Robinson, a couple of Scott Wheeler, a couple of the reporters that were there released that information. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, I just, the results on the ice are one thing because it's one game, especially in a one-game elimination, anything can happen. But it just seemed like negligence from the coaching staff to just like it's a very unserious thing and a very unserious look for your team when you don't take morning skate, not even an optional skate either. Like, give the guys the chance of, here's the ice. If you want to go. If you don't, then don't. Because then it's just, the players decided not to get on the ice. The coaches gave them the option and they stayed home and did their own thing. So that's the first thing that's a little annoying.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously the other thing, quick here too, is the talent. This is not a country that is starving for talent. This is a country that has an abundance of it. And you see a lot. I mean, I saw a lot of people saying, this guy's not here. That guy's not here. Why isn't this player there? Why isn't that player there? That was also the other problem. We hear one of the executives say, we took recommendations from teams around the CHL. We gave the spots to the players who earned it and deserved it. And then, now we've gotten to the point where people are questioning the whole development system of the country. Like, it's crazy because, like, we still got guys being selected first overall. Like, we're still got the Connor Bedard's, Macklin celebrating. I understand. I'm going to say this. You look at the other countries that have been playing this tournament, the U.S., Finland even, and Czech. Like, they're closing the gap in terms of being competitive. But don't get me wrong, Canada still has the wealth of talent. It's just you could just tell it was not there.
It's the decision making. It's not the talent pool. It's the people who are chosen to be there. And it's, I think, what was it? I was reading a tweet and it said that it was 79, 80, 81 was the last time that Canada was knocked out this early in the tournament in consecutive years. And that after that 81 year was when they started the program of excellence, which is what kicked off Canada holding a monopoly over the gold medal for a decade. Like from the mid 2000s to, the mid 2010s, where, they didn't win every gold that year, but they were winning every other year at minimum. And it was an absolute disaster if they didn't get to at least the gold medal game.
I remember I remember when the tournament was in Ottawa back in 08-09.
Yep.
Tavares was on that team. A lot of those players, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of those players were either not drafted yet, or they were drafted, but they were obviously never going to be in the NHL right away.
It was funny. I remember in that tournament that it was like, I think it was PK Subban, and we know how good he was as a player, but I think he was a second round pick. And it was like, why is he, he's made it to one of the last spots over X, Y, and Z. There was the same conversation. He ended up being a feel-good story, but it was like even a high-level second rounder who became a multi-time all-star, was a superstar defenseman in the NHL, was like, second rounder, like, are we sure we should be taking him over X, Y, or Z? And that's just, it goes to show what exception or what expectations there are for this program year in and year out. Even now, like, I was thinking going through this whole tournament, like, it isn't the same as when I was, say, in high school. I remember when the World Juniors were in Europe, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. to watch World Juniors games because it was the biggest thing. Like, you're off school, you're watching the World Juniors if you're a hockey fan. And now it's kind of like, and maybe it's because I'm also a lot older. You don't really know the guys as well. It's harder to kind of get excited.
There's a lot of teams too. There's 60 CHL teams.
Yeah.
You have guys in the NCAA.
You have guys in Junior A. You have guys. Some guys go. They're all over the place. So it's hard to kind of keep track of the talent pool. But at the same time, then you see, like, I remember when we were talking about the guys that were left off. I forgot a couple NCAA guys that were left out of the conversation too for this team that should very much have been here.
Yeah. So I think it first starts off with you cannot leave players like top picks should not be left off. Yes. Not even left off the roster, left off of selection camp. Like, some of these guys are going to get camp invites. And that to me is troubling. So we'll see. I mean, look, I understand people are frustrated. I very much understand that. Hopefully it's a wake-up call for Hockey Canada, although we've had things like this and there's still those problems kind of around, but maybe a bit of a wake-up call now for Hockey Canada. In a best-on-best tournament, just bring your best. That's all the fans are asking for because, again, it's been beaten to death, but 5 top 10 picks in this past year's NHL draft. You have, I believe Michael Hage, his name is, he plays in the NCAA. He has as many goals as Riley Leonard, who just won
the tournament MVP, not even invited or left off the roster. Beckett, Seneca, and Zane Perek were left off the roster, then invited, then cut because they were injury replacements. It's just like Canada is a very old school way of thinking about it, where they're going, this guy's a first liner, this guy's a second liner, third liner, where they're plugging guys into slots instead of just put the best 12 forwards and the best 6 defenders and the best 2 goalies you have, 3 goalies, and go play the games and see how they work. The United States didn't have to this year, were stacked. They just plugged skill guys into positions and they played their roles. You don't have to put role players in these positions and expect them to play, because the skill gap is so close in these tournaments that you can't afford to just bring guys to, be a third line or fourth line checker. You need a guy that can pot goals. And it shows in Canada. I think, what did they have? 1 multi-goal scorer in the tournament? I believe it was 12 players that only had 1 goal across the team. And it's like, that's great. Every team in the NHL is looking for secondary scoring, but when your top line can't get it done, and you put the expectations of a whole country who expects to win this tournament every year on a kid who turned 17 a couple of weeks before the tournament, that's not fair to Gavin McKenna. It's not fair to, all these younger guys. Like Easton Cowan didn't have the greatest tournament. They also didn't utilize him in a great position. Like that first line, I don't know if you got to see the game against Czech. They put, Cowan, Ritchie, and McKenna together, and they were electric over the 2 periods they were together, but they only put them together for 2 periods in the whole tournament. They played 5 or 6 games. And it's like, you can't really do that and then say you tried everything and you gave it all you got, when it's like, no, you didn't put your players in a position to succeed with the roster construction or the lineup construction. And that's where the gripe of a lot of people is, I believe.
Yeah. And so all we can do is hope that things get a little better for next year. I think the next tournament is in the States. So maybe it'll be nice to win it on American soil, but we'll see how that goes. Thank you, Austin, for hopping on with me.
No worries.
And we'll be back with another episode of the Locked On Leafs podcast on now. Usually we record. When I record, we'll get it up really early morning, past midnight. This one will be on a little later Tuesday. I have scheduled a co-host with me. Frank is back. Frank Sinishi is back, good friend of the show. So looking forward to talking with him about McCabe, where things are going there. Hopefully we get more Leafs wins, because they're doing well right now. They're in top of the Atlantic. So we'll discuss more on what they can do to kind of keep themselves in that position next here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.